Great. Okay, so I'm going to continue here. I'm Wendy Bruff, Judge Bruff. I will be presiding over the trial this afternoon. I wanted to wish everybody a good afternoon. I realize it's a little bit different than meeting in person, but we will still have a good competition this afternoon, and I'm looking forward to it. So at this time, I'm going to ask, it looks like everybody's already done it, but I am going to ask the judges who are scoring to please turn off your audio and your video. And then we'll go straight to appearances. So if we could have the appearances by counsel, I would appreciate that.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. My name is Calvin Ha, and I am the government counsel for today. I'll be working with my co-counsel Noah Ha, who is my second chair and will be manning the technology.
Thank you, Mr. Ha. And how about for defense counsel? Could we have your appearance, please?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Anna Claypoole, and I, along with my co-counsel, Ms. Isabella Torres, are representing Ms. Bassett on behalf of the defense in today's case.
Good evening. All right, great. Well, it looks like we are ready to go then. Then let's all go to speaker view, please. I think I'm in speaker view. So we will go to speaker view and go straight to our opening statement. Mr. Ha, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, please.
May it please the court, opposing counsel, members of the jury. This is a business, not a charity. As long as it's my money, that's the way we'll run it. For as long as she can remember, Cara Bassett has dreamt of owning an elephant sanctuary. So, in 2011, when she and her husband, Don Clark, opened the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park, it should have been a dream come true. However, the park wasn't what Cara Bassett had in mind. Instead of allowing the elephants to run around safe and free, Ms. Bassett's husband, Don Clark, kept the animals in cages and treated them like commodities. For the defendant, this was a nightmare, and for years, she begged her husband, Don, to change the way he ran his park. Every time, she got the same response. This is a business, not a charity. As long as it's my money, that's the way we'll run it. Cara Bassett took those words to heart, and on August 18th of 2017, she decided she was going to take matters into her own hands. She started by stealing a syringe of the deadly poison carfentanil from the Elephant Park storehouse where it was kept as a tranquilizer. Next, she poisoned her husband, Don, and drove and buried his body at a swamp. And then she used the power of attorney that she gained through her husband's convenient disappearance to transform the park into a sanctuary and get everything she wanted. Members of the jury, today, we, the prosecution, bear the burden of proof, and we will show beyond a reasonable doubt that Cara Bassett is guilty of murder. We will show that the defendant had the motive, the means, and the opportunity to kill her husband, and that there's undeniable forensic evidence linking her to the crime. First, we'll show that Cara Bassett had the motive to kill her husband. Today, you'll hear testimony from FBI Senior Agent Steph Branham, who will tell you that for years leading up to Don Clark's disappearance, his wife had begged him to change the way he ran his park. And when Don Clark finally disappeared, Cara Bassett gained the power of attorney she needed to get everything she wanted. Second, we'll show that Cara Bassett had the means to kill her husband. Agent Branham will tell you about a syringe of deadly poison that disappeared at the same time as Don Clark. A syringe that Cara Bassett had easy access to. And third, we'll show that Cara Bassett had the perfect opportunity to kill her husband on August 18th of 2017 when she was alone with Don Clark at the Elephant Zoo. Members of the jury, you'll also hear about undeniable forensic evidence that links Cara Bassett to the crime. as algae on her boots and GPS records on her van place her at a swamp on the night of her husband's disappearance. The perfect place for her to dispose of her victim's body. Members of the jury, Kara Bassett would do anything to get what she wanted. And on August 18th of 2017, that included murdering her husband. At the end of today's trial, the evidence will point you to only one conclusion. And that conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, is that Kara Bassett is guilty of murder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ha. Ms. Claypoole, would you like to make your opening statement now or reserve?
Now, Your Honor.
All right, please proceed.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, please proceed.
Injustice is most easily concealed through the guise of a scapegoat. May it please the court.
Yes.
The story begins with investigator Steph Brown, a stellar FBI agent with numerous achievements to his name. However, the disappearance of Don Clark was simply one he could not solve. The man seemingly vanished in the middle of the night without a trace. And when a year passed without as much as a body, Branham took matters into his own hands. He launched a vendetta against my client and used her as a scapegoat to conceal their gross miscarriage of justice. Ms. Bassett had no motive other than to protect hurting animals. However, her husband, Don Clark, viewed them as an everyday source of income. This caused problems in the marriage, problems that angered both partners. But these problems were not severe enough to drive murder. However, through the testimony of investigator Steph Branham, the prosecution will paint Ms. Bassett as a vindictive woman. Despite their lack of a body, their lack of a murder weapon, and a lack of a suspect that has an alibi, you will see that they try to give a strange facade in which Ms. Bassett is in fact guilty when she wished no pain on her husband. However, we, the defense, will give you the facts you need to choose your verdict today. We will call documentarist Jo Young. She will shine light on the FBI's sloppy investigation. She will share that in the time they spent in the park, they never reviewed the over 2,000 hours of footage that Ms. Young recorded, that they egregiously mishandled evidence, and that they failed to even consider other suspects in this case. And finally, a giant part of the prosecution's case in chief today is how much Ms. Bassett stood to gain from her husband's death. But Jo Young will remind you of a simple fact, that her husband's death only brought pain on Ms. Bassett. This was a payout not worth the assets she received. Your Honor, the burden of proof lies solely on my opposing counsel today. They must show to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Ms. Bassett murdered her husband and did so in cold blood. However, they will fail to meet that burden today. Without a body, without any solid evidence, without a witness that doesn't even have an alibi, you will find that Ms. Bassett is not guilty of the murder of Don Clark. The FBI had a standard to meet, so they took the easy way out and blamed my client. But Your Honor, her husband's death only brought pain on her. We remind you that Ms. Bassett has experienced an injustice at the hands of malicious prosecution. So we urge you today to rule in favor of the defense and acquit Ms. Bassett for the murder of Don Clark. Because remember, injustice is most easily concealed through the guise of a scapegoat. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Claypoole. Now, I understand that the prosecution would like to call a witness. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution would like to call Agent Steph Branham to the stand.
All right, you may do so. And in this particular context, will the witness be sworn or are we bypassing that?
Your Honor, it's the government's understanding that the witnesses are to be presumed sworn. However, if you should
Okay.
swear, we can swear
No,
them.
that's totally fine. I wasn't sure what exactly we were doing with regard to that. Now, if everybody could go to gallery view, we'll make sure we can see all the faces of the individuals who will be speaking during this. So yes, Mr. Ha, if you would like to please call your first witness. And we will presume them to be sworn already.
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Agent Steph Broadham to the stand. May I proceed?
Yes, please proceed.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Would you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Yes, my name is Steph Branham. I am the Senior Special Agent for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, badge number 2589.
And Ms. Buren, could you please spell your last name for the record?
Yes, Branham.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, proceed, Mr. Ha.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Agent Broadham, what sort of responsibilities come with the job at the FBI?
Yes, so as the Senior Special Agent, I investigate crimes, I collect evidence, I do witness interviews as well as interrogations of suspects.
Could you tell us about one of your more recent investigations?
Yes, my most recent investigation was the investigation of the 2017 disappearance of 38-year-old Tallahassee resident Don Clark.
And in this investigation, who did you interview?
I interviewed Don Clark's children. I interviewed employees at the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park where he worked. I interviewed his business associates, his friends. I interviewed people who worked at the Belleon Airport, as well as rangers at the Big Gum Swamp, and also his wife, Kara Bassett.
I'd like to talk a bit about your conversations with Kara Bassett. You mentioned an elephant zoo earlier. According to your conversations with Ms. Bassett, what did you learn about this zoo?
So I learned that the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park was opened in 2011 by Don Clark. Both the defendant, Kara Bassett, and Don Clark ran the zoo together. And I also learned about a few disputes over the way that the two would run the zoo, excuse me.
Now, based on your conversations with Kara Bassett, what were these disputes more specifically about?
Well, in my interviews with Kara Bassett, I learned that she had a distaste for the way that Don ran the zoo for profit. She didn't want the elephants to be kept in cages, and she also wanted it to be a nonprofit to benefit the elephants. She would talk about how Don Clark would not make the zoo the sanctuary that she wanted, and how he would continue to tell her that it was a business for profit.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes, what's your response?
These are admissions by a party opponent. Anything from an interview with Ms. Bassett is an admission by the defendant.
Okay, the objections, go ahead.
Oh, yes, Your Honor. In that case, I would rescind my previous objection and object to just hearsay within hearsay. The statements by Ms. Bassett are admissible under party opponent. However, the statements of Don Clark are not admissible without an exception.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes, what's your response?
The statements quoted within Ms. Bassett's interview were Don Clark saying, "I'll continue running the park this way." And that's a statement of intent, which is a hearsay exception under Rule 803.3.
Okay, the objection is overruled. Proceed.
Now, Agent Broadham, during the interval from 2011 when the park was opened to 2017, did Ms. Bassett say the conditions improved at all?
No, in fact, she told us that the conditions got worse. Don Clark started trading and selling the elephants. She told us that she was furious.
Now, at the time of Don Clark's disappearance, what assets did he have?
Well, Don Clark owned the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Zoo. He also had properties in Costa Rica, as well as a plane, his Cessna, and he also, and all of those assets added up to $8 million.
And when Don Clark disappeared, who inherited those assets?
Well, due to a power of attorney, she had Kara Bassett.
Now, you mentioned a power of attorney. Mr. Hugg, could you put exhibit number 15 on the screen? May the record reflect that this exhibit has been pre-admitted into evidence per pretrial order number 7.
Yes, the record will so reflect.
Now, Agent Branham, based on this document, what sort of powers did Kara Bassett gain when her husband went missing?
Well, this document told us that in the event that her husband was physically or mentally disabled, dead, or disappeared, she would be able to obtain the power over all of his assets, including the elephant park.
Did Kara Bassett have any means of murdering her husband?
Well, yes, we found that in the search of the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Zoo, there was a missing syringe of carfentanil, an elephant tranquilizer. And we later found that carfentanil is actually deadly to humans. And we further concluded that Kara Bassett used that to kill her husband.
Objection, Your Honor. Opinion on the ultimate issue.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may respond.
The fact that Agent Branham is issuing an opinion to the ultimate issue in and of itself is not objectionable. And as for Agent Branham's opinion under Rule 701, this is a rationally grounded and reasonable opinion.
Object. Do you have any response, Ms. Claypoole?
Yes, Your Honor, it is objectable due to the fact that Ms. Branham is offering an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of Ms. Bassett and testifying as to her means in which she did commit a crime.
The objection is sustained. Proceed.
Yes, Your
The answer is stricken, or the statement is stricken. Go ahead.
Agent Branham, let's take a look at some documents. Mr. Hug, can you put Exhibits 17 and 18 on the screen? May the record reflect that these also are pre-admitted under pretrial order number 7.
Yes.
Now, Agent Branham, to your knowledge, do these documents accurately reflect facts about carfentanil?
Yes.
Your Honor, calling for an expert opinion. May I be heard?
Yes.
Officer Branham is not well versed in chemistry or the dangers of substances such as carfentanil, and therefore cannot proffer an expert opinion on whether or not the information presented within this material safety data sheet accurately represents the facts of carfentanil.
And what's your response?
Your Honor, Agent Branham has established the foundation that she was the lead investigator into the disappearance of Dawn Clark. She had control and leadership over a forensics team and a number of experts who informed her as she was making her decisions and conducting her interviews.
Okay, the objection is overruled. Proceed.
Now, Agent Branham, according to this document, how dangerous is carfentanil?
Well, this document told us in our investigation that 1 milligram of carfentanil in a human could be deadly. It also listed some of the other symptoms, but injection of this chemical could be deadly to a human.
Now, Agent Branham, based on your interviews with Kara Bassett, where was she on the night that Dawn Clark disappeared?
Kara Bassett had told us that at 9 p.m. she was with Dawn Clark, and after the investigation, we found that she was the last person to be seen with him and also hear from him.
Now, did you uncover any forensic evidence during your investigation?
Yes, we obtained forensic evidence from the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Zoo, where we found mud on a wheelchair, as well as mud on the defendant's boots. We also uncovered forensic evidence from the Chevrolet Express owned by Dawn Clark, and also collected forensic evidence from the Big Gum Swamp.
Now, you mentioned algae. Let's talk about that. What did you do with these algae traces you found?
Well, what we did was we took the samples and we took them to a forensic analyst for the FBI. And the analyst further tested those and compared them to see if they originated or if they were the same types of algae.
Let's take a look at that forensic report. Mr. Hogg, can you put exhibit number 5 on the screen? Now, Agent Branham, does this look like an accurate copy of the report you read earlier in your investigation?
Yes.
And according to this document, where did the algae originate?
Well, after reviewing this document, I read
I
was gonna make some chicken or something.
We do need Brittany to mute, please.
Oh.
Could you please mute? Thank you. Go ahead.
Now, Agent Branham, according to this document, where did this algae originate from?
Yeah, so after reading this document, I read that the analyst concluded that it originated from the Big Gum Swamp.
And based on the GPS records that you found in Dawn Clark's van, where did that van go on the night of Dawn's disappearance?
So the GPS records told us that at 11:17 p.m., Dawn Clark's van left the residence of Dawn Clark and Kara Bassett and traveled 139 miles to the Big Gum Swamp. It stayed stationary at the Big Gum Swamp for about 45 minutes and then drove back 2 hours to Tallahassee, but stopped at the airport, the Belle Leon Airport, which is 5 miles away from the residence, and that's where we found the van.
Mr. Ha, can you put Exhibit 31 on the screen? And may the record reflect that this exhibit is pre-admitted into evidence.
Yes, that will be reflected.
Do these GPS records accurately describe what you just stated, Agent Branham?
Yes.
Now, how do you, as an FBI lead investigator, explain the fact that algae from Kara Bassett's boots matches a swamp and these GPS records?
So after reviewing these records as well as the forensic data that we found, we further concluded that Kara Bassett's shoes connected her to the van, which connected her to the Big Gum Swamp. After finding that the algae samples were from the Big Gum Swamp that were found in the van as well as her shoes, we connected Kara Bassett to all 3 sites.
Thank you, Agent Branham. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Claypoole, you may cross-examine the witness.
Yes, Your Honor. So, Detective Branham, I understand that you were the lead investigative officer for the disappearance of Dawn Clark. Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
And he had disappeared from the Elephant Park around August 18, 2017?
Yes.
And at the park, when you did your initial search, you found no signs of blood or violence?
No, we did not find any signs of blood or violence.
You didn't find a body?
No, we did not.
And you found a syringe of missing carfentanil, is that correct?
Yes, after searching the storage unit at the park, we found that there was a missing syringe of carfentanil.
And upon investigating this carfentanil, you did learn that this can prove lethal to humans upon just a few drops, is that right?
Yes.
And Ms. Bassett knew this about carfentanil, is that correct?
Yes, Ms. Bassett did know, and she also had access to the carfentanil, which led to my conclusion.
So you just stated that Ms. Bassett had access to this carfentanil, but so did about a dozen other employees, is that correct?
Yes.
And now, to my understanding, 2 park employees could not provide alibis for the night of Dawn's disappearance, is that right?
Yeah, they could not provide alibis that could be checked and confirmed.
But Ms. Bassett had an alibi, is that correct?
Her alibi was that she was at her home with Dawn Clark.
And her cell phone records confirm that she never left the house that night, is that also true?
Her cell phone records did confirm that the phone never left the house.
All right, now, to my understanding, you spoke with Ms. Bassett dozens of times, is that right?
Yes.
And each time that you interviewed her, she cooperated fully, is that correct?
Yes, she did.
But you were never able to speak to Mr. Clark's ex-wife, Lisa Clark, is that right?
No, I was not.
She refused to cooperate with your investigation?
Yes, she refused to cooperate.
And the one time that you did speak with her, she told you that Dawn Clark deserved to die, is that correct?
She did say he deserved to die.
Now, Investigator Branham, I want to talk about what you did find in your investigation today. So I understand that you conducted a forensic analysis of Mr. Clark's van, is that correct?
Well, the forensic analyst for the FBI did, yes.
Right, my apologies. But would you recognize this report if I were to show it to you in court?
Yes, I would.
Let the record reflect my second chair, Ms. Torres, is putting Exhibit 5 on the screen.
The record will so reflect.
All right, Investigator Branham, can you see that adequately?
Yes, I can.
All right, and so I understand that the van that you guys tested was frequently used for park-related purposes, is that right?
Yes, we did find that in our investigation.
And the employees at the park all had access to the van?
Yes.
but you found Dawn's hair follicles in the van, is that correct?
Yes, so we found 6 hairs that ended up matching to Don Clark's DNA in the back bed of the van.
Right, and you also found Dawn's fingerprints in the van, is that correct?
Yes, along with Kara Bassett and Kelsey Stebbins.
And now I understand that you also found some interesting algae samples when you examined this van, is this correct?
Yes.
All right, now I want to draw your attention to this forensics report. So according to the section highlighted in yellow, sample 2 was taken from Miss Bassett's food, is that correct?
Sample 11, yes.
Oh, my apologies, yes. And now this algae matched the algae of the Big Gum Swamp, is that correct?
Yes, our forensic analyst concluded that it was the same type of algae.
But just to clarify, your forensic analyst never sampled the algae found from the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park, is that right?
No, she compared it to the algae found at the Big Gum Swamp.
So she didn't test the algae at the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park?
No.
And to clarify, when your team tested Ms. Bassett's clothes that she was wearing on the night of Dawn's disappearance, no algae was found on those, is that correct?
We did not find any traces of algae.
All right, now I want to draw your attention to the section highlighted in blue, I believe. Ms. Bassett, or algae can be transferred through contact, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And it can even remain on surfaces for months?
Yes.
All right, but you still concluded that Ms. Bassett had to have obtained the algae from the Big Gum Swamp that night?
Well, yes, our forensic analyst concluded that it was to a high degree of scientific certainty that the algae was originated from the Big Gum Swamp due to the rare combination of the types.
Right, you said a high degree of scientific certainty, but it can't be 100% for sure, isn't that right?
Not 100%.
Yes, ma'am. And now I want to talk a little bit about your experience with the FBI. I understand that it's pretty safe to say your career is more than stellar.
Yeah, I've been working for the FBI for almost 20 years now. I've investigated over 100 cases, and I even won an honor for my investigation of the campground case where the child went missing.
Of course, but I do understand that your investigation of Dawn Clark extended over a year.
Yes.
And it was initially a very difficult investigation.
Yes, it was a pretty difficult investigation.
And just to clarify, Ms. Bassett was the first suspect that the FBI did proffer, is that correct?
Miss Bassett was the suspect after we looked at the evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Are we doing redirect in this format?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Do you have redirect, Mr. Huh?
Yes, I do, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes. And just for my own clarification, do we do recross?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So you proceed with your redirect, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Agent Branham, when Don Clark disappeared, who gained all his assets?
Kara Bassett gained all of Don Clark's assets.
And based on your investigation, did Kara Bassett have any means to murder her husband?
Yes, as I stated, she did have access to the carfentanil, and she was the last person to see or hear from him, so we concluded that she did have the means.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Huh. Ms. Claypoole, do you have any recross?
No, Your Honor, I do not. Thank you.
All right. So, Mr. Huh, do you have any additional witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the prosecution rests.
All right. So, Ms. Branham, you may step down. Thank you very much for your testimony. With the prosecution having rested, calling no more witnesses, Ms. Claypoole, are you calling any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor, at this time, the defense calls Ms. Jo Young to the stand.
All right. Could Ms. Jo Young take the stand? Yes, good afternoon. And I assume that you have been sworn. So, Ms. Claypoole, would you like to proceed with your direct exam?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Please state your name for the court.
Hi, my name is Josephine Young, but everyone just calls me Jo.
And what is your current occupation?
I'm doing what I've dreamed of doing since I was a little girl. I'm a filmmaker.
And how did you get involved in filmmaking?
Well, I've always been interested in art. but I could never really find the right specialty for me. In college, I actually majored in art for a while, but I found that I couldn't put the ideas that I had in my head down onto the drawing paper. That's when I picked up filmmaking. You don't need to be handy with a pencil for that.
So, Ms. Young, can you tell me a little bit about your work on Elephant Queen?
Yeah, absolutely. Kara contacted me in 2015 when she asked me to film her documentary. I was a young producer, so naturally I was extremely excited. I mean, sure, I was never really an Animal Planet fan or that passionate about elephants, but I was determined to find the story.
Ms. Young, I'm showing you what has been previously entered as Exhibit 7. Can you tell me who this is?
Yeah, that's Kara.
And how did you get to know Kara?
Well, I worked for her when I was working at the park on the Elephant Queen documentary. I got to know her very, very well.
And did you know her husband, Mr. Don Clark?
Yeah, I did.
To your knowledge, did Don have any enemies?
Well, you could say that. Lisa Clark, his ex-wife, they fought a little bit.
And can you tell me a little bit about their strained relationship?
Sure. From what I saw, it wasn't great. She came to the park a few times. One time she threatened him so much that Don had to call the police.
Can you tell me about this instance in which Don had to call the police?
Sure. She was saying things like, "I'll wipe you off the face of the earth. You'll be sorry."
So, did you ever capture any of these instances on camera?
No, we didn't. We decided that we would take the documentary in the area of elephants and focusing on the Elephant Queen herself, so we didn't capture that moment.
Just to clarify, how many hours of footage did you receive in your filming of the Elephant Queen?
We received 2,000 hours. It was great. I had never gotten that much footage before, so I couldn't wait to take it back to the studio.
That's amazing. Did you show any of this footage to anyone before this trial?
Well, actually, the FBI never asked to see it, so no, they'll just have to wait until it goes on the big screen.
And now, to your understanding, my apologies. Do you know why the FBI didn't ask you to see the footage?
Objection, Your Honor. Question calls for speculation.
My apologies, Your Honor. I'll move on.
What was that?
I said my apologies, Your Honor. I'll move on.
Okay. Question will be ignored by the jury. There's no evidence that comes from that. Please proceed, Ms. Claypoole.
All right. Ms. Young, were you ever interviewed by the FBI?
They asked me a few questions once, but not a formal interview, no.
And now I want to talk about some questions that you asked in your work on the park. Would you recognize some videos if I were to show them to you in court today?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so Your Honor, these exhibits have not been pre-admitted, so I would like to request that Your Honor, my opposing counsel and the witness refer to exhibits 41, 47, and 48 within their trial binders.
All right.
All right, so Ms. Young, what are these videos?
Well, it looks like Exhibit 41 is a video that I filmed of Kara just a few days after her husband had gone missing. And then it looks like Exhibits 47 and 48 are of Kelsey. She was one of the employees at the park.
And are these fair and accurate copies?
Yeah, I think so.
Have they been altered or changed in any way since you last saw them?
No.
At this time, the defense moves to enter exhibits 41, 47, and 48 into evidence, Your Honor.
Is there any response by the government attorney, Mr. Ha?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, they will be admitted.
All right. At this time, we are playing what has been previously marked as exhibit number 47. My apologies.
I'm not sure if anybody else is having this issue, but I don't hear anything.
Yes.
I worked
Okay.
with Donna Kara every day for 5 years, but the police didn't ask me a single question.
Ms. Young, did you hear that adequately?
Yeah, I did.
All right. And never interviewed despite working at the park with Don and Kara every day for 5 years. Can you tell me who this was in the video?
Sure, that's Kelsey. She was one of the employees at the park.
And do you know if she was one of the only employees that wasn't interviewed?
No, I knew there were a few other employees. I think Nate Garson maybe, and Sabo Grandi.
Objection, Your Honor. There's been no foundation laid as to how Ms. Young would know who the FBI interviewed.
Your Honor, may I respond?
What was that?
Your Honor, there's been no foundation laid to show how Ms. Jo Young would know who the FBI talked to or interviewed.
All right, Ms. Claypoole, what's your response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Young has laid ample foundation about how she spent every day for the past few years working at the park filming this documentary. She would in turn understand and have strong relationships with Ms. Grandi and the other employee.
May I
The objection sustained. Move on.
All right, now, Ms. Stebbins, I want to talk a little bit about the tranquilizers. Can I play exhibit number 48 for you?
I don't get it. I worked with Dawn and Kara every day for 5 years, but the police didn't ask me a single question.
My apologies, Your Honor. It seems we've played the wrong video.
Okay.
The day he disappeared, I heard him on the phone. He was speaking Spanish and he sounded very, very scared.
Ms. Young, do you know what Ms. Stebbins was talking about in this video?
Yeah, I think she's talking about an interaction that she had with Dawn on the day of the disappearance. I actually overheard the call too.
And could you describe this call for the court?
Yeah, of course. I was talking with Don about some travel plans when all of a sudden he got some kind of message on his phone and his face turned white.
Do you know if Ms. Bassett was aware of Dawn's involvement in Costa Rica?
Well, I think I interviewed her one time and she said that she wasn't.
All right, and now I want to talk to you about this interview that you had with Ms. Bassett. Would you recognize it if we played it?
Sure.
All right, we're playing what has been previously entered as Exhibit 41.
I don't know where Don is. Maybe he went to Costa Rica. He has a vacation home there. Maybe somebody did something to him. I don't know. He has a lot of business deals that I don't know anything about. Maybe he got mixed up in something.
Ms. Young, can you clarify as to what this portion of the interview reveals?
Yeah, I mean, I think she was just saying that she wasn't entirely aware of what was happening and that she just hoped she could find her husband.
And did you ever investigate Dawn's involvement in Costa Rica?
Yeah, actually I did. I did my own little mini investigation and I went to his Costa Rican property.
What did your investigation yield?
Well, I found when I went to his house that a fan was on.
Objection, Your Honor. There's been no foundation laid as to how Ms. Young would know that Dawn Clark had a property in Costa Rica or where that property would be.
What's your response, Ms. Claypoole?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Young spent every day at the park for the past 5 years with the Clarks. Dawn was not in town all of the time because he frequently traveled to Costa Rica. In addition, on the day of Dawn's disappearance, they did talk about travel to South America, which in turn would indicate to Ms. Young that Dawn did have a home in Costa Rica.
Can you please ask her how she knows that the house that she visited in Costa Rica was the victim's?
Yes, of course.
To lay some foundation on that? So at this point, the objection is sustained. Go ahead and see if you can lay the foundation.
So how did you know that the house was Dawn's?
Well, I knew that he had a property in Hermosa Beach. And then when I got there, I found some of his clothes in the closet. So that confirmed what I thought I already knew.
All right, now, Ms. Young, when did you stop filming your documentary?
I stopped filming around September of 2018. That was when Kara was arrested.
And why was she arrested, or how did you react to her arrest?
I was devastated. I mean, I spent all this time with Kara, and I don't think this is something that she would do. I hate seeing her being treated like a slave.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, we have no further questions.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hall, would you like to cross-examine, please?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Young. My name is Calvin Huff, and I'll be asking you some questions today. Before we begin, can you see and hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. Now, Ms. Young, let's be clear. You haven't seen Don Clark in 3 years, since August of 2017, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I hope wherever he is that he's okay.
And on August 18th of 2017, when you last saw Don, he wasn't planning on going anywhere, right?
Well, not that I knew of, but I did hear Kara speak with him on the phone, something about, I don't mind if you go without me on some upcoming trip.
But as far as you're aware, on the day that you last saw Don, he didn't have any imminent upcoming trips, right?
Right, the only thing
Your Honor, calls for a lack of personal knowledge.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes?
My question asked the witness, according to your knowledge, so confining it to what she saw.
The objection will be overruled. Proceed.
Now, according to what you saw, Ms. Young, Don didn't have any imminent upcoming trips, right?
Well, like I said, that phone call might have suggested something, but I wasn't aware of anything directly, no.
And in fact, when you were leaving the park on August 18th of 2017, Don Clark told you, see you when you get back, right?
Yeah, he did.
Now, Miss Young, when you went to Costa Rica to Don's vacation home, he wasn't there, right?
No, he wasn't.
There was no food in the refrigerator, right?
That's right.
And for an entire week, you didn't see anyone enter or exit that property, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Let's talk a bit about some of Don's relationships now. In July or August of 2017, isn't it true that Don's wife, Kara Bassett, threw a vase at his head?
Objection, Your Honor. This is improper character evidence.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes?
We're not using this testimony to show a propensity on the part of Kara Bassett, but rather to show that she had a motive or something that she was upset about.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
Ms. Bassett is on trial for murder today, and this instance of character that my opposing counsel is attempting to proffer only paints Mrs. Bassett in a negative light as a violent woman. It is most definitely establishing a character of Ms. Bassett.
Your response.
Your Honor, we're not using this to prove propensity. We're not saying that on August 18th, Kara Bassett acted in the same way. Instead, we're using this illustration to show that Kara Bassett did have something that she was upset about with Don Clark a month before he disappeared.
So are you saying that it goes to motive?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, the objection is overruled. Go ahead.
Now, Ms. Young, isn't it true that in July or August of 2017, Kara Bassett threw a vase at her husband's head?
Yeah, there was one time where she flung this little elephant vase that she got at a gift shop. It shattered against the wall, but no one got hurt, at least no one human. The elephant vase never really recovered.
But no one got hurt because Kara missed Don's head, right?
Yeah, like I said, it shattered against the wall.
And this was just a month or so before Don Clark disappeared, wasn't it?
I would say so, July or August of 2017.
Now, Ms. Young, I'd like to talk to you a bit about your interviews. During the filming of your documentary, you conducted a number of interviews with Kara Bassett, right?
Yeah, that's right. I wanted to film everything. I was practically glued to my camera.
And it's my understanding that you received a copy of all exhibits digitally before today's trial?
Yes, I did.
Can you verify then that exhibit number 38 is an authentic interview between you and Kara Bassett?
I can.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to admit exhibit 38 into evidence.
And that is outside the number of exhibits that were pre-admitted, is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Claypoole, do you have any response to his request to admit that particular exhibit into evidence?
Yes, Your Honor. In addition to being hearsay, this evidence is more prejudicial than probative.
And what's your response?
Your Honor, on the count of hearsay, this exhibit is not hearsay because it's a statement from an unavailable witness, Ms. Bassett, that's against her interests.
And your response?
Well then, Your Honor, this statement is not against Ms. Bassett's interest at all, because all she is saying is that nothing is more important to her than elephants. It doesn't establish anything that would potentially cause harm or liability to Ms. Bassett.
All right, the objection is sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Young, when you went to Don Clark's home in Costa Rica, you didn't find any toiletries, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And there were no suitcases lying around, right?
Not that I saw.
And when you got back to the park on August 26th of 2017, after Dawn disappeared, you didn't see any missing suitcases or anything else that was gone from the park, right?
I didn't see anything, but I wasn't in his house, so I don't know exactly.
Thank you, Ms. Young. No further questions at this time.
All right, now, Ms. Claypoole, do you have any redirect?
No, Your Honor, my time elapsed, so no thank you.
All right, so with that, Ms. Claypoole, do you now rest?
Yes, Your Honor, at this time the defense rests.
Okay, so what I'm going to ask for our jurors, our judges to do, including myself, is to, while everything is fresh in our mind, while our contestants are maybe looking last minute notes for their closing, I'm going to ask the judges to go ahead and fill out the ballot as to the things that we can evaluate at this point. Of course, we cannot do the closing argument, but we can certainly do the witnesses and the opening and the direct and the cross. So let's go ahead and at least get that portion of our ballots done. So we'll take just a moment and let the participants here catch their breath. And then we will proceed with closing. Just for my own edification, Mr. Huh, I understand you will open with the closing. Ms. Claypoole will get a closing, and then do you get an opportunity to readdress the situation, or are we bypassing that?
Yes, Your Honor, the prosecution has a rebuttal.
Okay, so at this moment, we're going to take just a few minutes to get our ballots going and let our participants get situated, get ready for their closing. Yeah, I think that we would definitely not do closing argument and not theory and theme. We want to hear the closing first, but we can certainly do the witnesses and some of the other preliminary matters. Okay, I'm going to give it just a few more seconds, and then we will go ahead and hear from Mr. Ha for his first closing statement.
Sorry, Your Honor, I didn't catch that. Did you want me to begin my closing statement?
I think we're just going to give it a few more seconds and let the judges fill out the ballot, at least on the parts that we can, and then we'll go ahead and go to you in just a moment. Just a minute or two now, less than that. Okay, with that, we should have a good start on our ballots. And while everything is fresh in our minds, and then let's hear from Mr. Ha. Would you please make your closing statement at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court, opposing counsel, members of the jury. Kara Bassett would do anything to get what she wanted. And on August 18th of 2017, that included murdering her husband. Members of the jury, we're here today to get justice for Mr. Don Clark. We can't get back the now 3 years that he's been missing. We can't return all the stolen time and memories. But what we can do is find the person responsible for his death and bring that person to justice. We, the prosecution, bear the burden of proof, and we have shown beyond a reasonable doubt that Miss Kara Bassett is the one responsible for the murder of Dawn Clark. We've shown that the defendant had the motive, the means, and the opportunity to murder her husband, and that there's undeniable forensic evidence linking her to the crime. First, you've heard about Kara Bassett's motive to kill her husband. Today, Agent Branham told you about a power of attorney document that gave Kara Bassett control over all of Dawn Clark's assets in the event of his death or disappearance. You heard from Agent Branham that leading up to Dawn's disappearance, Kara Bassett had begged her husband to change the way the park was run. And you heard that when Dawn Clark finally disappeared, Kara Bassett gained the power to do exactly what she wanted. Second, you heard about the means Kara Bassett had to murder her husband. Agent Branham told you about a syringe of deadly poison called carfentanil that went missing from Dawn Clark's elephant zoo at the time of his disappearance. You heard from Agent Branham that Kara Bassett had easy access to that substance and that she was the last person to use the syringes. And third, you've heard that Kara Bassett had the perfect opportunity to kill her husband on August 18th of 2017, when she was the only person at the park with Dawn and when she was completely alone. Members of the jury, you've also heard about undeniable forensic evidence that links Kara Bassett to the crime. Agent Branham told you about the forensics report that she received from the FBI forensic team that showed that algae on Kara Bassett's boots matched algae from a swamp called Big Gum Swamp. Agent Branham also told you that GPS records on Kara Bassett's van placed her at the swamp on the night of Dawn Clark's disappearance, the perfect place for her to dispose of her victim's body. Members of the jury, Kara Bassett would do anything to get what she wanted. And on August 18th of 2017, that included murdering her husband. Kara Bassett had the motive to kill her husband. She had the means to kill her husband, and she had the perfect opportunity. Today, the evidence points to only one conclusion, and that conclusion is that Kara Bassett is guilty of murder. Members of the jury, get justice for Mr. Clark. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hum. Ms. Claypoole, would you please like to make your closing argument at this time?
Yes, Your Honor, I would.
Please proceed.
Injustice is most easily concealed through the guise of a scapegoat. May it please the court. Today, we heard the story of Kara Bassett, a woman who fell prey to the vindictive vendetta launched by the FBI. But let's talk about what Investigator Branham tried to prove to you today. First, she talked about elephant tranquilizers. But members of the jury, without as much as a body, we don't know if these tranquilizers could have even caused Mr. Clark's death. And regarding these tranquilizers, if they were to have caused the death, Ms. Bassett kept a detailed log of their use and insisted that each and every syringe was carefully accounted for, because her and her husband stood to lose everything if one went missing. Now, regarding the use of the syringe, we understand that a few drops are enough to kill any person, but Ms. Bassett is accused of using a whole one. Members of the jury, if Ms. Bassett is as meticulous as the prosecution claims, then why not even feign the fact that she tried to use a tranquilizer to kill her husband? This would have been an easy detail for her to conceal. And this is all notwithstanding the dozen other people who had access to the elephant tranquilizers, including two with absolutely no alibi. Now, second, algae found on Ms. Bassett's boots is claimed to have put her at the crime and the scene of the crime. But members of the jury, the prosecution has neglected to mention how this forensic substance can be transferred from substance to substance. Ms. Bassett need not have gone to the park herself for the algae to have gotten on her boots. And if we think about this as well, there was no test at the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park. So the algae found on her boots could have also been from the place that she resided in. And in addition, the prosecution has failed to mention that absolutely no algae was found on Ms. Bassett's clothes that she wore on the night of Dawn's disappearance. Their neglect of potential exculpatory evidence should not be ignored, members of the jury. But I want to talk to you a little bit about what Investigator Branham did tell you today. He mentioned GPS records that exhibit the Dawn Clark's van traveling from the park and then to the swamp and then back to the airport. And members of the jury, in no way do we contest this, but if we were to listen to the prosecution's theory that Ms. Bassett was the one that drove this van, there's a giant fallacy. If Ms. Bassett staged the car at the airport, then how did she get home that night? Did she have an accomplice that the FBI never investigated? Or are we supposed to believe that she made the 5-mile trek on a sleepless night within 30 minutes and the wheelchair used to move Dawn laden on her back? Members of the jury, too much doubt is present in this implausible theory. Now, finally, the prosecution has put an overwhelming amount of evidence on just how much Ms. Bassett had to gain from her husband's murder. They claimed that the payout was big enough to make her want to do it, and members of the jury, in no way does the defense contest this. The payout was huge, but the cost that it came at overwhelmed Ms. Bassett. In exchange for Dawn's life, she would have lost years of memories that were never made, wedding anniversaries that were never celebrated, and years spent growing old together that never got to transpire. Members of the jury, this is a transaction that no person would ever want to take. Please do not fall for Detective Branham's wicked vendetta. It is overwhelming with doubt. And now, Mr. Hull came up here today and tried to tell you that Miss Bassett would do anything to get what she wanted. But we want to remind you that Detective Branham did the same thing. He had the motive to protect his career, or her career and solid record. She had the means, a position of power in which she abused to use my client as the scapegoat. And as for the opportunity, well, we all know that Ms. Branham spent a year investigating and turned up nothing. There was ample time to point fingers and make accusations. And no matter how ungrounded they were, her position of power enabled her to use my client as a way to protect her own record. Members of the jury, do not fall for the gross injustice that my opposing counsel has painted for you today. Doing so would only perpetuate a culture that we so desperately need to escape. Now, in a few minutes, Mr. Hull will come up here and give his rebuttal. And then you, the jury, will go to deliberation with one question on your mind. Is Ms. Bassett guilty of murder, or was she simply the easiest to blame? Well, members of the jury, the defense reminds you of this. If there is so much as a shadow of a doubt in your mind today that someone else may have stolen the carfentanil, then you must acquit Ms. Bassett. If there is even the slightest bit of doubt that the algae came from a place other than the Big Gum Swamp, then you must acquit Ms. Bassett. If there is even the slightest bit of doubt that Ms. Bassett could not have gotten home in 30 minutes from 5 miles and a sleepless night with a wheelchair on her back, then you must acquit Ms. Bassett. And members of the jury, if any part of you does not want to believe that a woman would sacrifice years of memories for a quick payday, then you must acquit Ms. Bassett. If there is so much as a shadow of a doubt in your mind today, then you cannot rule in favor of the prosecution. So members of the jury, we want you to remember that Ms. Bassett was their first suspect. She was the easiest to blame. But that is not an excuse for how they have treated her, launched this vendetta against her, and used her as a scapegoat. So we urge you today to rule in favor of the defense and acquit Ms. Bassett for murder. Because remember, injustice is most easily concealed through the guise of a scapegoat. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Claypoole. Now let's go to Mr. Ha for his rebuttal.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
May it please the court. Opposing counsel has alleged that the FBI has a vendetta against Kara Bassett. If anything in today's case has a vendetta against Kara Bassett, that's the evidence. Because members of the jury, the evidence is what's against Kara Bassett. If Kara Bassett didn't murder Don Clark, how do we explain the GPS evidence that Agent Steph Bronham told you about? How do we explain the fact that Kara Bassett's van drove to a swamp 2 hours away on the night of her husband's disappearance? How do we explain the forensic algae testing that Agent Bronham told you about? That Kara Bassett's boots and a wheelchair from her park ended up at Big Gum Swamp on the night of her husband's disappearance. If anything, members of the jury, it's the evidence that's against Kara Bassett. Now, opposing counsel may ask you 4 questions in their closing argument. First, they told you about the missing carfentanil. But Agent Bronham told you that Kara Bassett had easy access to that substance and that she was the last person to use the syringes. The algae shows that Kara Bassett and her boots were at Big Gum Swamp on the night of her husband's disappearance. That also shows that Kara Bassett is guilty. And as to how she got home, Agent Bronham told you that Cary Bellevion Airport, where Kara Bassett abandoned her van, is just 10 minutes away from Kara Bassett's home. And as for motive, the defense doesn't know Kara Bassett. Kara Bassett would do anything to get what she wanted. She would throw vases at her husband's head just because she was upset. She had the motive to kill her husband, to free the elephants like she'd wanted for so long. She had the means to kill her husband, easy access to a dangerous and deadly poison, and she had the opportunity. She was alone with her husband on the night he disappeared. Kara Bassett would do anything to get what she wanted. And the evidence, not the FBI, is against her. Kara Bassett's not a scapegoat. She's guilty of murder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ha. Now that concludes our trial. I want to congratulate all of the participants. You did a wonderful job. I'm going to give our